raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
I'll tell you, welcome to another thought-provoking episode of Men Talking Mindfulness, where today we're going to delve into the fascinating realms of mindfulness and finding our purpose in life. In our increasingly fast-paced and demanding world, it's more crucial than ever to cultivate a deep sense of self-awareness and clarity in order to navigate the chaos and find true meaning. Join me, John McCaskill, and my co-host over there, Will Schneider, as we explore the transformative power of mindfulness, discuss the importance of mindfulness or the importance of purpose, and share insights and practical tips to help you develop a more intentional and fulfilling life. Let's embark on this enlightening journey together as we unveil the tools you need to unlock your inner compass and guide you towards the life you've always dreamed of. But first, I've got to say hi to my co-host, Will. Brother, great to see you, man. How are you?
Thanks, John. This is going to be a different show for me. I'm standing up. I got a standing desk. I'm standing. So I might be like moving a lot. Like I'm definitely a mover. So it's like I might be dancing.
Love
the
it.
show.
Love it.
When I get excited, I don't know. So it's all, we continue to grow here, man. Talking mindfulness and finding ways to not just bring you a better podcast, but make podcasting a little easier on ourselves all the time, and continually increasing the quality of our podcast. But one way that you can increase the quality of your life, just take a moment. And John, let me ask you, and everyone out there listening, is it time to get away, to unplug from all the emails and social media and the digital chaos? How about imagine yourself in a serene, natural-filled location, releasing your stress and anxiety, hitting reset, rejuvenating your body, your mind, your soul, and having fun? Well, this can be you if you sign up for our Mindfulness Adventure Retreat in upstate New York on May 18th to the 21st. We're going to breathe. We're going to move. We're going to get mindful. We're going to have a lot of fun on this 3-night immersive experience that includes, a 4-week integration program. So you want to learn more about that, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com/retreat to book your spot before they're gone. We already actually have a little over half of our capacity, so that's wonderful. I'm excited for that retreat, John.
For sure.
Especially the people that are already going on the retreat. We have a bunch of retreat offenders, maybe you can call them, that are coming on the retreat. Yeah, returnees. That's right. Okay, they're not offending anybody, right? So if you want to, keep in touch with Men Talking Mindfulness, you can get our free mindfulness workbook and subscribe to our weekly newsletter by simply texting mindful, right? That's MID and FUL to 33777. That's mindful at 33777. And please, we are growing, John, in remarkable ways, not just from our efforts, but anybody out there listening can help us grow by taking a screenshot right now and tagging at Men Talking Mindfulness, and let people know on your social media that you're becoming more mindful by listening to the show. Our YouTube is available out there. We have like snippets of parts of our conversations that you can just, kind of reabsorb some of this content and help you become more mindful by doing so. And you can find us on YouTube at, Men Talking Mindfulness YouTube. What is that? That's all I don't see it on the notes here.
Yeah, it's all
really
good.
Doing a good job. But
you were doing a fantastic job. You still are, man. Hey, we're raw, uncut, and unapologetic, brother. It's just go to youtube.com /@ Men Talking Mindfulness. So youtube.com @Men Talking Mindfulness, and that's where you'll find us.
John, I love how you rescue me so often during the show. That's so nice. Thank you.
Vice versa, so obviously, we're here to support one another.
Yeah, we are. We really are. And we're showing people what support can be like.
That's right. That's
two men coming together and doing something that comes from a place of purpose and passion, John, which we're going to dive into in a moment. But what's going to help us kind of get a little bit deeper, get a little bit grounded, get a little bit more present is our 5 breath grounding practice. So everybody find a seat or whatever you're doing. You can do this in almost anywhere, except if you're talking. So just shut your mouth and just exhale out, exhale out. Empty, empty, empty. Maybe close those eyes. Feel that grounding of your sit bones in this space. If you're sitting or your feet on the ground, take a big, giant breath in. Big inhale. And exhale out the mouth for that long 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Do it again. Big breath in, 5. Expanding like a big balloon, and then slowly, vertically, and all the way to the top, and exhale out. Again, feel the power of the inhale. Feel that gentle peace of the exhale. Two more in. Out. And to relax the face, melt your shoulders, melt yourself into the here and now. And one more time. In, big breath for 5. And let it go. Good. Maybe some micro movements and put a smile on your face because you are a part of another episode of Men Talking Mindfulness. So awesome, John. Great to be back.
I got to tell you, I've got the standing desk too, but this is the first time that I've been standing. I'm actually standing on an ab mat, the mats that you use to do abs. And so it provides some cushioning, but I didn't realize how much my eyes, I know this, but I didn't realize in this particular instance, how much my eyes come into play in balance. And as you were leading that, for those who are watching potentially, I was kind of swaying back and forth because my eyes were closed and I'm standing on top of this ab mat and my balance was completely thrown off. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But it was pretty neat practice. So
it's fun. Actually, I have one leg up kind of in a half pigeon on the desk.
Wow. There you
go. So it's like, I feel it's more stable for me. I don't know. So it's kind of like sitting and standing at the same time. Okay. Let's do this, John.
Yes, I digress. So let's start with, what is purpose and where does it come from? And we often use Google to find these notes to do some research. We do use a lot of books. We read a lot of books. We have a lot of authors on. But today we wanted to kind of try something out. So we used ChatGPT and I typed in what is human purpose and where does it come from? And it comes up with the concept of human purpose refers to the reason or intention behind a person's existence or the pursuit of certain goals or aspirations. It is the idea that there is a fundamental meaning or direction to human life beyond mere survival or physical gratification. And that, I'm super impressed with ChatGPT. I'm also a little scared by it, but there's this one particular response was spot on and I loved it. And it also reminds me of this movie. I've got young kids, so I watched the Croods. If you're familiar with that movie, it's the cavemen and women. And anyway, it's basically a family that lives in a cave because the dad doesn't want them to die, and he keeps them in this cave. And the daughter wants to get out and live her life. And there's a scene in it where the father says something about living your life. You have to live your life in the cave, and she says, "Well, that's not living. That's just not dying." And to me, I think that's what purpose is. It's finding the reason we are here, the reason we are living this life, right? It's very easy for us to get wrapped up in the everyday kind of rigmarole, the fast-paced life that we talked about at the beginning, and get wrapped up in doing, and never really stopping to think about, hey, am I doing things that are related to my purpose? So I love that opening. And funny enough, like I mentioned, it's from ChatGPT, but man, it was spot on.
Yeah. Purpose, John, for me, it's really my experience of living life on purpose. Like I've kind of been on my own path for like 20 years, moving to New York with a passion to act, and then finding yoga, getting deeper into mindfulness. And now, this show is really, it's kind of always waiting, in some ways of like not knowing exactly. I think one thing that, as we dive into purpose here, one thing that I think really needs to be very explained and understood is, just because where you start, like, I'm going to do this one thing, we're going to talk about how to find that thing that you're going to do. And you think it's going to be one thing, and maybe you just that's your first foot or first several steps on the path to pursue your purpose, but that can change. I went from acting, I was teaching acting for a while, and I started meditating, I started doing more yoga, I started teaching more yoga. And even all during this, thinking like acting was like, that's going to be it. And I had some success and it was fun. And I learned a lot about myself because it demands so much of the self, and it demands so much going on the inside, right? To access more of your emotional life, to be more present on stage. That's what kind of brought me into the mindfulness space. That what brought me into meditation. The physical practice of yoga helped me to release a lot of stress and anxiety in my body. It created hell of a lot more physical awareness. The teaching started to develop more of my voice around these practices, which I already had developed more of my voice by being on stage, being on camera, being calm. And even during, when I was teaching, like pre-pandemic, I used to go to this therapist for years, and I'd be like, I don't know what my legacy is going to be. I don't know what my end goal is going to be. I don't know. And it's frustrating. And then pandemic hits. It's kind of it kind of pushed me in a new direction, and it pushed me to you, or it pushed us to the show. Like, I knew you did pre-pandemic, but this is the show because I love it so much, and I want to help people. And that's a big part of being on purpose and living a good purpose, is like not just, serving your bank account or your basic needs or your wealth, but serving other people. So connecting to a higher purpose is really important when you are working and finding and discussing your purpose, which we'll get into. But I just wanted to share, I think people think, or maybe you don't, or put it in the comments if I'm wrong, or if this is true, that just because you start in one place doesn't mean it's not going to change.
And
sure. I think part of being on purpose is that flexibility and vulnerability of just tapping into something greater than yourself and letting that guide you in some ways, as well as working to access more of that, more of that voice, more of that heart, and allowing that to help pull you forward in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I think, like you mentioned, your purpose can change over time, and you're going to probably in your lifetime have multiple purposes. Like for me, I feel that my purpose when I was in the military was one thing. I think the overarching purpose is service, right? I served in the military, and now I'm serving in a different capacity. And that's my purpose with Men Talking Mindfulness and everything else that we do that's kind of associated with Men Talking Mindfulness, helping others lead their happier, healthier, more fulfilled life. That's definitely the overarching purpose. But even underneath that overarching umbrella, there's like miniature purposes, right? And I think that's something that we need to be aware of, and be aware that we can change purposes over time. And I think that's going to change with your priorities. As a 24-year-old single guy, my purpose was definitely serving in the military. That's what I felt, and that was my number one priority. I did get married, and I honestly still felt that my purpose was to be the Navy SEAL and to serve this country, and that was my number one priority. And that was that was to the demise of my first marriage. Since then, been remarried, have 3 kids, and my number one priority is my family, and the purpose is serving still. The purpose is serving them. The purpose is serving in my career as well. My entrepreneurial endeavors are all circled or focused on service. So I think that finding the overarching purpose is important, and then finding maybe sub purposes or priorities underneath that, and then realizing that maybe even that overarching purpose is going to change. Those priorities are definitely going to change over time, depending on your life situation. But yeah, it's a moving target, if you want to say that. And there's definitely things that are going to get in the way of you finding your purpose. They're going to get in the way of you pursuing your purpose. Maybe you find your purpose and then you don't know how to pursue it. And that's definitely an important thing to know, because that's potentially going to guide you on another path. But even if you get guided on another path, you may be able to find your purpose on that path. And that's another important thing to consider. Well, let's get into, how to find your purpose, man. What are some ways that you want to discuss?
Well, it's funny, as I was making the poster for this show, right? And I haven't been familiar with this term Ikigai until I heard it multiple times in The Gift of Diversity with Marcus Aurelius Anderson, who was on the show this season. And I was like, Ikigai, it was awesome to see that come up. As I'm like searching, and I use Canvas or Canva, create posters and stuff like that. And, I searched like purpose and just to see what images would come up. And then sure, Ikigai was kind of everywhere. And I was like, oh, good. I'm glad they brought that up, because that was something that really, boom, it's a great concept. And, and Marcus breaks it down brilliantly in this book. And, and then I really actually went and looked in like, what is a Venn diagram? Because I know what it is, but then I want to know what it was, so I can speak to it very clearly. So there's 4 circles in this Venn diagram of Ikigai. And there's like the 4 circles are the fields, right? That you begin to explore. And then those circles begin to overlap in 2 other ways. So we'll talk about all of that, the big circles, the overlapping, and then the center and what it all means. So the 4 circles are, if you really want to start to discover, like, hey, what is my purpose? Like, you might have an idea what it is, but this will help you maybe clarify it a little bit more. And it's good to write things down. It's not something, I don't think that, would help me continually become more purposeful with my time and my life, and my intention, I think, is a really key word here when you come to purpose, like being intentional. And as I was studying for the show, it's like that started showing up a lot of different synonyms for purpose is intention, right? Definitely, it's in the definition of purpose is intention. So being intentional and taking time and actually, and just maybe creating this little Venn diagram for yourself can really help you define what this purpose is. So 4 circles to start. It's like, number 1 is what you love, what the world needs. Number 3, what you can get paid for. And number 4 is what you are good at. So that's the 4 areas that you want to explore and really begin to contemplate, sit down, write, and really go deep into them and really be honest with yourself about all that. And then you want to go into the intersection parts, John?
Yeah.
Unions, they call them, according to Venn diagrams, like what they're called unions when the circles begin to merge in these 4 little quadrants.
Right. I mean, I'm going to nerd out here because I'm a math major and operations research master's. Yeah. So Venn diagrams, I lived in the unions and the intersections. So, and I love this image, right? I've seen this 1,000 times, and it's very powerful.
I'll actually bring it up on the screen.
Those 4 circles. But you've got, again, what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. And the intersections or the unions of those 2. So it's just exactly, if you're watching now, you can see what Will's holding up. I should have brought up a shared screen image, but you can see the intersections, again, the unions. And that's where not all of them overlap, but there is some overlap between some of the circles in the Venn diagram. So the unions are passion, mission, vocation, and profession. And those are great. Those are definitely important to have. But then when they all overlap, all 4 of those in the center, again, where what you love overlaps with what the world needs, and it overlaps with what you can get paid for, and it overlaps with what you're good at, that can be your purpose. Although I will argue with that Venn diagram too, in that, hey, we don't get paid for this podcast yet. Yeah, exactly. We don't get paid for this podcast, but I feel this podcast is a big piece of our purpose, and it's definitely a part of the passion, the mission, the vocation, and the profession. But we're not getting paid, so that piece of that Venn diagram is still missing. So maybe we can figure that out, or maybe if you're listening, you can help us figure this out.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's true. We get paid in different ways,
in other ways. But it's also, I think it's like, and that's a good point, John. About when I read about getting paid, it's like, it's how about being paid in appreciation. Right. Or paid in, that doesn't necessarily keep the lights on. But, one thing that actually Marcus Aurelius Anderson talks about in his book as well is the 80-20 principle. Yeah. So creating, this is kind of the way I've been living for quite a while. It's like, so I've taken all this yoga experience and meditation, all like the reputation I developed here in the city. And, that is about 20% of my time. That's all, to keep a roof over my head, which I'm very fortunate. It's only like, 10, 15 hours a week or something like that, just to keep a roof over my head, which is great. But the other 80% of my time, right, is this. It's writing, it's researching, it's working on our book or working on ways to bring more mindfulness to more people. So it really gives me an opportunity to just to explore this passion, explore more of this purpose, and dive in deeper. And I was experiencing this when I started to act. Like I had a full-time job, which that consumed a lot of my time, and then I got another part-time job just to kind of work, find a new skill as a waiter, because I knew I'd be waiting tables when I first got here in New York. But also that gave me an opportunity to put a bunch of money away too.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to New York, June 3rd, 2003, it'll be 20 years this June 3rd, John. I'm going to have a celebration. And I was able to take that money that I saved up. I was very fortunate to find a place. We'll talk about these synchronicities in a moment, but I found a very inexpensive apartment, and it was nice. Things started to fall into place, and I was able to not work all the time and instead take like at least half my time or more to plug myself into the acting world here in New York. So yeah, I think that's, go ahead.
I think, you've touched on an important point here, kind of indirectly, but I definitely think you've mentioned it, and I kind of indirectly mentioned it too, is part of your finding your purpose. We've done an episode on, the growth mindset or the beginner's mindset versus the fixed mindset. And, the growth mindset, a way to foster that growth mindset, that's to be vulnerable and to be open, but also to experiment and to explore. And you touched on exploring. And so we've kind of explored, you've been an actor, you were in pharmaceuticals, you've waited tables. I mean, I think that's kind of a rite of passage for everyone going to New York City is to have to wait tables. I've waited tables, but never in New York City. So I can only imagine how stressful that is. Definitely need mindfulness.
Tough skin, people skills, charm, right?
Goodness.
You have to develop all those wonderful skills.
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah. But, you got to try out those new experiences, whether that's a new profession, whether it's a new hobby, a new activity, maybe a new volunteering opportunity, and really engage in those experiences that can help you to better understand what you're passionate about. And then, where you may be able to get paid and what people need. And it's the Venn diagram. But you have to explore, and you have to be willing to maybe even fail and fall on your face and realize, hey, you know what? I'm not good at this, because that was another part of the Venn diagram. I'm not good at this, right? I'm not going to be an Olympic or an X Games athlete. I just don't have that coordination. I know that about myself because I've explored and I've experimented with, some of the sports that are out there, and I'm just not good. So I know that I'm not going to be that. That's not going to be my purpose in life. Yeah. So you have to realize that you need to explore, but also realize that you're going to have failures, going to have setbacks. Maybe in addition to that, when you are experimenting, and we've talked about this before on the show, is journal. That self-reflection. How does that make you feel? How does that particular profession, activity, volunteering, whatever, how does that make you feel? Like journaling about that, and then going back and looking at it after a few weeks. I wouldn't have gotten into teaching mindfulness if I wasn't journaling. If I wasn't journaling about how great I felt, one, when I was practicing mindfulness, and two, when I was teaching it. I mean, that felt very rewarding to me. And I felt kind of the intersection of those circles in that Venn diagram. So I think that's a couple of important things there too in exploring and finding your purpose is, one, be willing to explore, two, be willing to fail, and three, journal or do that deep self introspection.
Yeah. And keep going. Don't let the results scare you. Right. Because I've had some, horrible. Horrible in the sense when I was in the middle of it, it was emotionally like, oh my God, just devastating to just completely fail on fucking stage. Like I'm completely in front of a group of people, so incredibly embarrassing. And it was hard, but it didn't take me out of the game. Like I learned from it. and I took that wisdom from that experience. It's just a result. It's not a failure. Like, yeah, I mean, I failed in that moment, or other people could assume, that was a failure, and it was for that particular production or that particular class or something like that I was in. But taking that, I even failed in my first yoga classes. Like the first yoga class I taught, John, they fucking pulled me out after 20 minutes. Like I didn't even finish the 1 hour class. It was just like, oh my God, I need to sit down. So instead of like shaming myself out of, ever teaching again or stepping on stage again, it's like, okay, take that beginner's mind, like you said. And part of that beginner's mind is just like being humble, right? Realizing that, you're not going to be great at something that you just started yesterday. Like that's right. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even if you're some sort of savant, you're still going to suck. Maybe not as suck as bad as myself or John would, at something, but like you're still going to suck. You know what I mean? But that suck, right? That's the fuel. That's what helped me to keep going, because I wanted to get better. I wanted to learn a little bit more. I wanted to go deeper on the inside. I wanted to try different things. I wanted to take bigger risks. And that's a big part of finding your purpose too, is taking that risk. Like, when is that so say you go through the Venn diagram, you discover the center. It's like, okay, this is my purpose. Now I'm going to take that first step, into my purpose. But how do you keep going? Like, what does it take for you to keep going and keep showing up? But also then you're going to make a choice. It's like, is this just going to be, a little hobby and you're never going to fully access and live in the potential of that purpose? Or what do you have to, as things get bigger, as I step further into the mindfulness space and into the yoga space, like all of a sudden, like I needed to really take an honest inventory about, okay, what's going on with acting? Is it time to let it go? And then I just let it go. And I just went right into the next thing, right into, so thankful for all the things that I've learned, that I've gained and that is a real honest and an amazing part of my path. And it just done so much for me as a human being, because it requires so much in order to be on camera or hit the boards or get back to class and all the homework and stuff that's entailed, to really find the characters and stuff. So there's going to be a time when as you begin to access this purpose and begin to walk in the path and begin to live more of that purpose and feel more of that purpose, that you might have to make some real hard decisions. Like, all right, now what do I do?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Which is different part. Yeah.
And, I want to come back to your failures, right? Our failures, right?
Yeah.
We're going to fail. And that's something I think that actually prevents us from finding our purpose. That fear of failure, or when you do have that initial failure, quitting and saying, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be a yoga instructor. Maybe I shouldn't be an actor. Maybe I shouldn't be a mindfulness meditation teacher. Maybe I shouldn't be, I don't know, X, Y, or Z, because you failed at your first attempt. And, failing at your first attempt, what is that? Failure or fail is first attempt in learning, right? FAIL. At least that's what I've.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, FAIL is first attempt in learning, and that's resilience. Is failing, getting knocked down, and then getting back up and learning why you got knocked down and coming back stronger forward in the long run. The other thing that I think really keeps us, or one of many things that keep us from finding our purpose, is societal pressure. I remember when I was starting to get out of the military, and we've talked about this on the show before, I was in my military transition and I was speaking to people in different industries and everything. And that's another thing to find your purpose, is talk to people, find mentors in those different industries or areas of life, and find out what they do and why it's good for them and why they feel it's their purpose. But I was doing that. I was talking to people in private equity and venture capital and commercial real estate and all these different wonderful jobs. I think they're great work. I don't have anything against any of those. But for me, it just wasn't something that I was passionate about. So I was talking to a lot of people. But then two, when I started telling people what I was going to do, I told them, yeah, you know what, when I get out, I'm going to teach meditation and mindfulness. I got a lot of weird looks. I got, hey, how are you going to make money doing that? Well, I don't know. I'll figure it out. First of all, that's not my number one priority, is making money. Making money is nice. I like to put food on the table for my family, but that's not my number one priority as far as making money is not. My family is, but making money is not. And, that societal pressure was there. And then there's also tied to that it's validation seeking. Like, I want to tell people that I'm a millionaire and that I've got all these accolades and successes, right? So many people want that in life. And maybe that seeking that quote unquote success actually keeps you from being an internal success and finding your purpose. Maybe you find that you are really great at, I don't know, again, private equity or venture capital, and you're making millions of dollars. Coming back to James Doty, who was on our show talking about compassion and meditation and the reasons to do it. He was a multimillionaire and then realized that he was not really finding his purpose. And now he's founded so many things that are great for humanity, including the course that Will is going through on self-compassion. But that when we're looking for that external validation, somebody tell us, hey, you did a great job because you're making millions of dollars, because you drive a nice car, because you live in a nice house. Well, maybe that's keeping you from finding your true purpose. So those are, I think, some things that are important. So we're talking about on the show ways to find your purpose, but we also need to look at the flip side of that coin. What gets in the way of finding your purpose? So I just want to make sure I mentioned those.
No, yin and yang. It's like those naysayers, right? And I experienced a lot of that when I started to break free. And you just spoke of it, John. Like, oh, I'm going to teach meditation. Like, you're crazy, dude. There's like no fucking money in that. You know what I mean? And now you're definitely a hippie instead of this military gladiator.
I'm still growing my hair out, man.
Yeah, exactly. Just start growing your hair out and start, like whatever, saying Hare Krishna or something all the time. and like. But like I experienced a lot of that, and one of the guiding forces for me when I started contemplating and then figuring out, getting very intentional, being very strategic, and then leaving. My parents were, when I left this corporate job I had, it was like I was making good money. Like I probably could have been a manager like a year before I left or something like that, or a year after I left if I stayed with the company because they really liked what I was doing and who I was. And the safety and the money and the comfort and the consistency, but also, the group think, what do they say? Misery loves company, but loves mediocrity. Yeah. But loves mediocrity more. And I was just, I love all the people I worked with. And a lot of them were very passionate about, especially the PhDs that I worked with, like, really diving into cellular biology and stuff like that. Takes a lot of time, and and that's something that was their passion, and they pursued that passion, and they became a doctor of this, that, and the other thing in the science world, and and they're rewarded at this company. But I just didn't feel that passion anymore. I was just like, I just needed a job, and I just started, I just took this job, and it was fun. I liked the people I worked with, but it just I just lived for my weekends during that time. I just took my money and just partied, or like bought a bunch of stupid shit that I didn't just fill the void that I thought it would fill, but it just kept, it's like a never ending void. But when you find your purpose, you could really start to fill your cup.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. Like, this is like the artist's way. And, this is my guide right here. And Julia Cameron, the artist's way, she let me know, or she said, keep people in, you have a dugout, and people in the dugout and outside the dugout. And the people in the dugout is the people that I would share my dreams, my ambitions, like my feelings and my experience of, me contemplating taking this big move and leaving all this comfort, of just having a regular corporate job and stepping onto my own path, which is like completely the opposite, and also the opposite of everything, of all the people I was around, all the people in my family. Like, I was one of the first ones to really like break out and do my own thing. But people outside that little inner circle you have, those are the people that, that I didn't share yet until she calls you artist child, right? I was like kind of fostering this creative child within, or my artistic self. And it's just like a child. You can't just throw it out in the elements. You really have to protect, to swaddle, to take care of, to nurture. And then once you kind of grow up and develop a thicker skin, and you have more confidence because of the rewards and the experience you've had as you continue to walk on that path, it's like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and this is who I am. And you can really and that's just something to be aware of. Like when you begin to move into this purpose is who you could speak with about it. I think it's very important because again, that, mediocrity and that misery will really try to pull you down, because as soon as you begin to light up your tuning fork or your torch, if you will, other people will be like, oh, wait, you can't burn that fucking torch, because that means that I have the ability to light my torch. And
I haven't.
So it's very intimidating for people. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. No, and I was just saying, the fact that some people are going to keep you from lighting that torch because they haven't found their ability to light their torch. I mean, I want to come to one of the questions that's in the comments here in the live. It says, where do relations fit into Ikigai? For instance, if your relationship with your spouse or kids is not good, does the purpose get impacted, or how do these ideas work together? Great question from Aaron. Thank you for tuning in, Aaron, and thank you for the question. I think that is definitely something that probably needs to get added to that Venn diagram, maybe add a fifth circle, because it's definitely easy to say, hey, where do I get paid? What am I good at? What does the world need? What do I love? And be like, hey, you know what? It's not what's good for the family. But I would also argue that in finding your purpose, you're going to be passionate. You're going to be putting money on the table. I think you're going to be a happier and healthier individual, and you're going to be a happier person to be around. So it's ultimately, I think, going to be good for your family, good for your relationships. You're going to feel that sense of fulfillment. You're not going to feel that you got to keep finding the next thing to fix you or make you feel validated. You're going to feel validated. Yeah, you're going to fill that void. You are already filling that void in serving your purpose. So I think that's where it does come into play, is that you are doing it already. And I want to touch on that since we're talking about relationships. That's another piece that can help you to find your purpose, is cultivating those deep, those deep and meaningful relationships with friends, with family, sharing those experiences, talking about your aspirations, your goals, supporting each other. That's hugely important. So, if you're a spouse and your spouse is seeking their purpose, supporting them in that journey, because ultimately it's going to be good for you and your relationship, and vice versa. You should be getting that support as you're seeking your purpose. And so I think that can definitely be something that supports you in finding your journey. But the other side, again, the flip side of the coin, like I often say, is that if you're not getting that support, one, maybe that's not the relationship that you want to be in. I mean, I don't want to be a home wrecker here with the show, but maybe you need to talk to your significant other, whether that's a spouse or some other romantic relationship, and see what you can do differently to either offer that support or get that support. I think that's hugely important. So thanks for that question, Aaron. I appreciate the live question.
Well, I want to go, instead of just also the relationships with other people are really important. And, and if you're not in a supportive environment, or say your spouse isn't supporting you, that's going to be, I have a bunch of friends that, starting to make some change in their life, and their spouse was like, what the fuck are you doing? And eventually that relationship ended, because that's how important the purpose was. More important than, and the reason I mention this is because getting down to self, getting into yourself, the relationship with yourself. If you are sacrificing, and this is what I did for 6 years, or even, kind of through college in some ways, it's just like, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just kind of going through the motions, like living the story that I was fed as like a young man through my whole life. And when I wasn't on my purpose, right, there was an edge to me. There's an anger that's kind of inside of me, so it's just like, there's a lot of self-sabotaging when you're not, this purpose comes from, we didn't even talk about this yet, but it comes from a place of the heart, not of the mind in the sense of like checking the boxes of expectations of society and the way that my parents wanted me to be, and the way I don't want to rock the boat with my friends. So I just check everyone else's boxes, sacrificing my own heart, my own creativity, my own dreams. And then what comes in is this anger, this self-sabotage, this doubt and then all the habits that come with that. Cause I need to keep numbing myself, numb it to alcohol, drugs, sex, fancy cars, materialism. And you can just get lost in this place. And a lot of people, and let me know if anyone listening understands this or has experienced this or is experiencing this now, it's like you can get just lost in more. Just, I need more of this, more of that. And that just fills this void and that void is an indication of something that you're not in alignment with yourself and your place on this planet and your heart and who you can be as a person. Like, what is your potential? And Marcus Aurelius, again, talks about this a lot. If you're not living in that potential, you just open up the back door for a whole bunch of shit to come in. And you can live it all. That's the habits I'm talking about. That's the feelings you're going to have. That's the mediocre minds and souls you're going to continually hang out with, because at least you have a group of people that you don't feel so bad around because they're doing the same thing, which is essentially not living up to the potential. This is so that's a very, very key point here is it's like, if when I'm on purpose, John, now it's like I make sure my sleep is right every day. I make sure my diet is super clean so I can continually be very functional, very imaginative, very creative, have lots of energy throughout my day. I pick my spots when I can, when I go out and drink or have some fun in other ways that might kind of sacrifice my energy the following day or for a couple of days. And it's that relationship to yourself is what you start accessing if you begin to step on the path of your purpose. But it's also the relationship to yourself if you're not. That's another relationship, and that can really be extremely detrimental.
Yeah,
I don't want to read in a moment, but a lot of comments on that.
Well, yeah. Well, I think those are fantastic comments. I mean, the relationship with yourself is critical in so much of what we talk about, and so much finding your purpose, finding your why, connecting with others, having that self-compassion. That's huge. But I also noticed something that you hit on is the word more, right? So, seeking more. We talked about finding that, the next house, the next nice car, the next thing. That's definitely something I think that can get in the way of finding your purpose. But the other thing is more that we already have in our life. There's information overload, right? There's that constant barrage of information from social media, from news, from friends, from whomever, telling us what we should be doing. And I think that's getting in the way. And then it's also when we look at our purpose, if you will, maybe 50, 100 years ago, there were I think there were still a lot of purposes on the table, but not as many people realized it. And there are not as many purposes, quote unquote, as there are today. So it's like sitting in front of your cable TV now today, and you've got 10,000 channels, and you sit down and you start flipping with the remote, and you're like, an hour later, you realize you haven't actually watched anything. All you've done is spent time looking at the guide. Well, I think that's where a lot of us get lost in finding our purpose, is there's so many things out there that we actually get wrapped up in analysis paralysis. We're like, well, maybe I could do this. Well, maybe I could do that. But maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. And we also get wrapped up in the fact, coming back to the beginning of the show, the fact that we feel that we need to serve one purpose. Well, maybe that is you. Maybe you can find one purpose, but sometimes there's more than one purpose. Maybe you can find 10 purposes and actually do all of those. Yes, it's going to be tough, and you're going to have to manage your time, but you don't have to necessarily get pigeonholed into one particular purpose. So I think that that analysis paralysis, the more, either the seeking of more or the availability of so much more, gets in the way of our finding our purpose. So I know you had something that you wanted to read, but I wanted to make sure.
I definitely want to read something, but also bring up, it's like what prevents the analysis and paralysis is take fucking action. Just do something. Just start doing something, right? And then just do the best you can, right? To keep doing that one thing for as often as you can. Like one thing I mentioned make the fucking time to, number one, flesh out, with the Venn diagram or whatever process you're going to use in order to find your purpose. Make the time, even with just a little 15 minutes that you can kind of drop in and be active. It's not just like, analysis of paralysis. That could just be reading about like, your dream, whatever. Begin to develop or begin to work with the skills that are required in order to take on that purpose and take action. And the more consistent action you take, the more your spirit starts to lift, right? A big part of getting into the purpose, like your heart begins to open, right? You begin, instead of just being in, that box checking expectation narrative that I kind of broke down before. It's like, wait, that's just all mind, right? That's just all like outside, right? That's like the explicit, right? What about the implicit experience? And when you work from that implicit experience, heart begins to activate. Maybe you haven't lived in your heart in a long time, and understand that it's magical, it's powerful, it brings things to you, it has things, it'll run through you, it opens up imagination, it opens up like so many different realms of like earthly potential. It's unfucking believable. But it's going to take a little bit of time to get comfortable and begin to trust, your relationship to your heart and your relationship to this purpose. But the more that you continually keep that space, expand that space, that making time space I talked about, and just keep filling it, just keep doing more and more. And I mean, more in this sense, right? Just keep taking action, action.
In a good way.
Take action. And right. And fuck what the results are. The results don't necessarily matter. I mean, at the early beginner stage of the purpose, just keep doing. And that doing takes you another thing, opens up a door over here that you never even thought was possible. That's synchronicity. And more synchronicities, more things keep coming. And all of a sudden, like you wake up inspired, you wake up differently. And I'm going to read this, and anything you want to comment on that, John, go ahead before I read about anger.
No, man, go for it, because I want to get into, as we start to get towards the end of the show here, I want to get into specifically how mindfulness can help us. I mean, a lot of what we talked about already is founded on mindfulness, and I want to explicitly get into mindfulness specifically.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry I don't feel I was rambling. I was rolling, I guess.
No, man, you were rolling.
Okay.
Rolling.
Rolling. Yeah. And I wasn't on any Molly. I was just rolling with just kidding. That's what they say when you're on Molly, John, rolling.
Oh,
anyway.
I know, man.
Anger. Oh, nice.
I've never used it, but I know what the term is.
Oh, it's fucking good, man. Anyway,
oh, man.
You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that, Mom. You didn't hear that, Mom. My mom listens to the show now, John, when she on her little when she does her bike ride. She keeps telling me, you got to stop cursing. Mom, this is for you. I love you.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Anger is fuel. This is Julia Cameron, the artist way. She goes, anger is fuel. We feel it when we want to do something. Hit someone, break something, throw a fit, smash the fist into a wall, tell those bastards. But we are nice people. And what we do with our anger is stuff it, deny it, blur it, block it, hide it, lie about it, medicate it, muffle it, ignore it. We do everything but listen to it. Anger is meant to be listened to. Anger is a voice, a shout, a plea, a demand. Anger is meant to be respected. Why? Because anger is a map. Anger shows us shows what our boundaries are. Anger shows us where we want to go. It lets us see where we've been and lets us know when we haven't liked it. Anger points the way, not just the finger. Yeah, anger points the way, not just the finger. In the recovery of a blocked artist, and anger is a sign of health. Anger is meant to be acted upon. It's not meant to be acted out. Anger points the direction. We are meant to use anger as fuel to take the action we need to move where our anger points us. With a little thought, we can usually translate the message that our anger is sending us. That is Julia Cameron, man. She is like, I love this writer. And I just want to put that out there. So if you're really feeling that fire and that fury of anger, listen to it. There's a message in there. Instead of fighting it or pacifying it in some way, that could be like, I felt that when I was beginning to become who I am right now and do the things I'm doing right now. And yeah, John, go ahead. I just also want to talk about money after we kind of get into the mindfulness part of this.
Yeah.
How mindfulness can help.
All right.
Any comments on the anger or anything or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think anger can be so closely tied to passion. So I think that, and it can also honestly, I think it can guide us, but it can also cloud us. And what I mean by that is coming back to the failure piece. Maybe we get so frustrated and so angry at our attempts at something and we fail that we get clouded of the next attempt or what we could have learned from that. And we move on faster than we should have. Maybe we could have stuck with it one more attempt and found out that this is actually our purpose, our passion, something that's guiding us. So I think anger rather, is the double-edged sword, and we have to appreciate it for both sides of that and look at it and see where it's guiding us, but also where it's hurting us.
Yeah.
So let's just touch quickly again, more specifically on mindfulness and how mindfulness can help. I know we've touched on quite a lot of this already. Having that enhanced self-awareness. So as we meditate or live mindfully, and I always want to distinguish those two. I mean, there is coming back to another Venn diagram. There is some overlap between the two, between living mindfully and meditation, but they're not necessarily the same thing. But in living mindfully and or meditating, we can better understand our thoughts, our emotions, and really who we truly are inside. Again, kind of blocking out the noise of the world, blocking out all that noise that we talked about before as far as more, and that analysis paralysis. We can turn inward and tune out that analysis paralysis. The emotional regulation, stress reduction, prioritization. We talked about prioritization and time management before. If you allow the time to go out and do something, you actually set aside the time to go out and do something, you might have a better chance of actually finding your passion, finding your purpose. And I want to make sure I clarify myself there, finding your purpose, because not always is your passion necessarily going to be your purpose. You can still do your passion, but it may not be necessarily your purpose. So prioritization and time management, cultivating resilience. I mean, failing, and then realizing you failed, but it's just an attempt, and then coming back and doing it again. That is resilience, getting knocked down, getting back up. As you meditate, it's actually going to cultivate that resilience. And as you have more resilience, you're going to be more likely to find your purpose. Living in that present moment, encouraging personal growth. We talked about the growth mindset or the beginner's mindset. As you meditate, you're more likely going to be willing to try new things. You're going to be more vulnerable and open yourself up to learning new things. So it's going to really help to create an opportunity to find that purpose. And then, not to get specifically on any one religion, but a spiritual connection to a higher power of some sort. When you are mindful and when you meditate, that can connect you, whether that's to your personal higher being, the universe, whatever the case may be. Having a connection to something greater than yourself, I think that's a key piece that is fostered through mindfulness that helps to develop that sense of purpose, or helps you to find your purpose. So I wanted to make sure we hit on those, before the end of the show. So yeah, man, I'd love any comments on any of that, or we can move on to the money piece.
Well, I think that, meditation is just, it really helps you to sit and reflect. It really, you get to become aware of, more of that creative flow or that purposeful flow that starts to come through. There's the answers often, don't come from the outside, they come from within. But sometimes those, that voice and that feeling on the inside is met by things on the outside. Again, that synchronicity is a big part of how I began to experience when I first started taking those steps on the path. Like, things just started to happen. Doors started to open. Phone calls came in. Emails were coming, flying through. And it was like remarkable when I just knew that I was valuable enough, right, to take this step, and really put myself on the line. And almost like the universe and the world was kind of waiting for me to show up. And meditation and the practice of mindfulness really helped tremendously to just create that space in my mind, and if you're always continually bombarded by all your responsibilities and all the conversations that go around and those responsibilities and all the digital, interactions that, kind of make those things possible, and you never just stop, just stop and meditate for a little bit of time, or just go on a walk without all of this, distraction, then it's really hard to kind of let the good stuff come in. So that's what I really enjoy. One thing that really helped me with mindfulness and meditation is just creating that. And that's a great way to create that space too. And make that an honor, because you're really honoring yourself when you show up for meditation.
For sure.
So again, and it's so much of this comes back to self. Money, someone mentioned here, I was talking about like, and you mentioned earlier about how much money you make or do this, do that. It's like, I listened to Bill Burr the other day. He was just a little snippet of Bill Burr. And he was talking about, how he lived in New York and worked like a shitty job and was getting paid like, $8 to do stand up. But like he would do this little stand up and he'd get all those laughs and then he'd come home. And it didn't matter, like, did he work in his crappy job and just made $8 at some stand up? But the moment that he created on the stage and that vibe and that experience he had in that moment, he just came home and he was dancing with his girlfriend and having a great time. And it's like, and that's when that's the money right there, or that's where
the payment,
and it's amazing how stuff just starts to open up, like I've, on this path of I've been on this doing my own thing for long enough that it's just like, what, my heart's in the right place, my mind's in the right place, I'm doing the right things. I've developed the right practices in order to support, this passion and my heart and my mind, and I'm a good person, and it just comes, it's just there. It's just somehow there all the time. And I'm lucky, and we're growing and things are getting bigger and we're making more money and stuff like that. But sometimes it could don't make it about the money, make it about doing the work, make it about, exploring your art, your creativity, your purpose, and adding value to other people's lives. And you just watch how things start to fall in place by that value add into other people's lives. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, coming to the end of the show, I want to throw out to our audience, if you're watching live, love to, hear from you in the comments of ways that you have found your purpose, things that have maybe gotten in the way, and maybe you found your way around those things or through them even better. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's live or post fact. Put in the comments, again, how you found your purpose, maybe things that got in the way or how you got through them. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up the show, man. I think we've done a great job. Thanks, Will, for all your comments, for your research that you always do. And I love the passion and purpose that you bring into this show every time. So for those of you who
John, I gotta thank you as well. So thank you, because we do this together.
Yeah, right on.
And when you unite passions, wow, you're even more powerful. One thing, is also, accountability. Maybe get somebody to in your life that's going to help you to show up and make that 15 minutes, or 20 minutes or an hour a day or several times a week in order to make stuff happen. And
there you go.
Yeah. I almost want to comment on this person you talked about.
You're good.
Felt disrespected on the up
Just roll. They're probably not even watching anymore, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. But that's going to upset you. Then we're not your people. But anyway.
Yeah. Hey, so for our audience, and we'll wrap it up with a closing exercise. But for our audience, thank you for joining us today, and we sincerely hope you will join us again in the future. And we appreciate you tuning in. And if you got something out of this show, out of this episode, please share it with your friends, family, colleagues, and whoever you think needs to hear it. And, as Will mentioned before, please give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube and give us a review on the podcast. We'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear from our listeners and our audience. So that said, let's get into that closing practice. If you've never watched before, that's how we do it. We open up the show with a practice and we close it with a practice. And we're just going to do a really simple practice, focusing on our breath, just 5 simple breaths. All right. So go ahead and close your eyes. I'm going to come off of my ab mat this time so I don't fall down. And just bring your attention to your breath. And let's begin by exhaling as much as we can, emptying our lungs, bringing our navel to our spine. Holding empty, deep breath in. Hold at the top and relax. Empty, 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 holding empty at the bottom. That's 1. Deep breath in through your nose, ideally, starting from the bottom to the top. Hold full at the top and empty, 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 holding empty at the bottom. That's 2. Number 3, deep breath in Feeling all the way from the bottom to the top, holding full at the top, noticing that fullness, experiencing that fullness, enjoying that fullness, and now letting it go. Empty, empty, empty. Number 3, done. Deep breath in, all the way, filling those lungs, expanding your chest, expanding your belly, holding at the top, and letting it go. Release, release, release. And one more, holding empty at the bottom. One more deep breath in. All the way to the top, and an extra sip at the top. Hold and release. Final one, as you're releasing, bring some movement back into your body. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our show. Go for it, man.
I'm going to close with one quote, John, that really carried me on my path and then brought me here to the city. This is by W.H. Murray, and he says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative or creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That moment you definitely commit oneself, then providence moves to. All sorts of things occur to help one that would otherwise never have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision rising in one's favor, all manners of incident and meeting and material assistance which no man would have believed would have come his way. And then Goethe says, or Goethe, whatever you think you can do or believe you can do, begin it. Action has magic, grace, and power in it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Great show. Always a pleasure, brother.
Back at you, brother. Until next time, everyone. Peace.
Peace, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.